Welcome to the latest version. I'm your host, Betsy Bush. Think for a moment about the most age-segregated places you know. Are they nursing homes, retirement communities, assisted living facilities? How about college campuses? My guest today is Kate Schaefers. She's the executive director of the University of Minnesota Advanced Careers Initiative, a program that is bringing encore adults onto the university campus for an academic year of exploration in intergenerational classes. It's a model that might be one that fits this moment, and I'm so interested to talk to Kate Schaefers about this program. Kate, welcome to the latest version.
Thank you, Betsy. I am so thrilled to be here.
Great. Perhaps I should call you Dr. Schaefers because you do have a Ph.D., which I want to acknowledge because that's huge. Congratulations. But I hope I can just call you Kate.
Please call me Kate.
I love the idea of making college campuses more intergenerational. My listener might know that at the age of 56, I went back for a second undergraduate degree at Columbia here in New York. It was an incredible experience, and I wish more people my age could have that experience of going back to school in this moment in time, not going back to what you were doing 40 years ago, but doing something completely different. Can you tell me a little bit about the program you're working with?
Yes. And so one of the things that we have seen is that people come to this life stage without a lot of roadmaps. And so we have old models, outdated models of, you get educated and then you work and then you retire. And we know that this doesn't reflect the realities of most people as they navigate transitions across their careers. Lifelong learning is present across their careers and important. But then also people need some help to look at what they're going to look at in this next life stage, because the old model of a leisure retirement not only doesn't fit for how people are looking at what they want, but it's also oftentimes people need to integrate work in some capacity in this life stage. And so we need new models, we need new pathways. And so we designed University of Minnesota Advanced Careers Initiative to bring people back to campus to figure out what they want to do next, to explore and to be open to possibilities, just like they were at 18. And we find that there's a lot of similarities in the kinds of questions that people ask in their 50s and 60s and 70s that our 18 to 22-year-olds are asking, like, what do I want to do with my life? And how do I navigate this new world of work? And what skills do I have that the world needs? And what kind of difference do I want to make? They're exactly the same questions that people at 18 come to college trying to find answers to. And so we think that universities are ideal places for people to explore those questions.
Oh, that's so true. And it's important for universities to bring people back to campuses because they have these wonderful facilities that can serve a much broader section of the community than just the 18 to 22 set.
Well, and I think too, and universities need to be thinking that way. Because when you look at the number of 18 to 22-year-olds, we have a shrinking demographic. And when you look at the demographics of 50 plus, we have a huge population. It's growing. And so when you think about universities serving the people in our states and communities, they have to think beyond that 18 to 22-year-old. And I think it's also important for us to keep in mind, for the first time in history, there are more people 60 and older than there are children under the age of 18. So we're talking about a massive demographic shift, that we're an aging population. And then coupled with that is that we also have people needing to retool and to reinvigorate careers and look at new models. And so universities really should be serving people at all of those life pivot points, not just beginning of career.
I think about, I've interviewed so many people on this podcast who had a a desire to write or pursue music or art, and were always, either channeled into something, you need to have something to fall back on, or I wanted to make sure I was financially independent, so they went a different way. Now they're coming back to those early passions of writing and music and art and the other things that maybe they set aside. Are you seeing that kind of thing happening?
Absolutely. And, I think that one of the bonuses of this life stage is that I think people have more, or they at least perceive maybe a little bit more choice and we see this too with people starting businesses and going back to school. But I think people think about needing to work and earn a living, and sometimes they close doors to interests because they don't see them as being feasible. Once you enter a life stage where maybe you don't have to earn the same amount of money, it opens up possibilities to rethink some of those earlier interests. And we see people shifting not only into some of those artistic kinds of interests, which are the kind of the things that you mentioned, but also into social impact work and people wanting to do encore careers, which are meaningful careers that also have social impact. And so shifting into perhaps a job that doesn't pay as much, but is more heart-driven, of purpose-driven, and people wanting to make that contribution in their communities.
The interaction between undergraduates and older adults, what you're calling the encore adults, that's really an important interaction for both groups. I mean, I think we feel like, the older adult has wisdom to share with the younger crowd. But when I was an adult on the Columbia campus, I learned so much about seeing the world through the eyes of my younger classmates and how they perceived the future and that sort of thing. Is that what you're seeing happening in this program too?
Absolutely, Betsy. And so I think and we are still a fairly new program, I will put that out there. When we first designed what we were doing, we really had the person 50 plus in mind and looking at what kinds of experiences make most sense for them and how can we help them transition into a new stage of life that makes sense given what they're looking for at this life stage. What we were delighted to find, though, is that our undergraduate students benefited from these relationships just as our older adults benefited from getting to know the young adults. And as you mentioned, you get to see the world through their eyes. And similarly, our young adults get to see the world through the eyes of older adults. And we think about mentoring as being, an older person mentoring a younger person, but we had that exact experience, Betsy, where the young people were just as important in mentoring our older adults and teaching them things, not only worldviews, but also some real tools that they found that they were encouraging them to use. And, one of our fellows had a really interesting perspective, because our stereotype is that, an older adult brings all the wisdom and the young adult brings all the technology. And when you put them together, it's magical, right? And what she said is that it's not just that they know more about technology. And I'll also challenge that assumption because I think we're all learning about technology.
Right.
But they also know the nuance of when to use what technologies. And that's really about people skills. And so, knowing that the most effective way to communicate might be through, Slack. That this is a better way to communicate than a phone call, or, what to put in an email, or when to pick up the phone and talk. And our younger people sometimes do need a little stretching on when to pick up the phone and talk, because they are much more likely to use other forms of communication. But she said the nuance of knowing when to use what was really a learning experience for her. So I think we have wisdom of every generation, and I think we need to step back and really think about what every generation brings to that interaction. And it is magical when you put together people of different generations.
You also have a fairly large foreign student population. Is that right? Were they part of the mix as well?
Yeah, so many public universities and private universities as well, but I can speak specifically around public universities. We do have a large population of international students who come to our campuses to learn, both at the undergrad and the grad level. And we have found that some of these students come from cultures that value age and wisdom. And we have found that some of our students, our international students, have sought out our fellows in the classroom to go to them for advice on things like, looking at a resume or practicing interviewing. And it's been it's been amazing, some of the relationships that have developed through that, not just with the student and our fellows, but also with their families. And I can tell you one example. We had a student from China who was here a long way from home, an undergraduate student.
Sure.
And his mother ended up coming to visit, obviously before COVID, this is our conversation, and then wanted to meet our fellow because she had reached out to him and she was almost like his Minnesota mother. She filled in that role. I mean, she invited him over for Thanksgiving, and she was who he went to for advice on different things. And so his mother wanted to express her gratitude that he had found a family here that could support him when he was so far from home.
Oh, that is such a wonderful story. That is such a wonderful story. And as a person who has children, who are older than undergraduate, how much I would love to bring an international student to my home for Thanksgiving, but also knowing what it would be like to have a child very far away and to know that student was being looked after and that there were people who cared about him. That's a wonderful story.
And it enriched the life of our fellow and her family. Getting to know, having this cross-cultural experience and understanding just what it was like for him to grow up in mainland China and just cultural norms. And I mean, it goes both ways.
Oh, that's a great story. You're working with Professor Phyllis Moen, who has written about this particular stage of life, which we're all trying to get a handle on, and we're trying to figure out, what do we call it? How do we express what is happening here? She is calling it, and you are calling it, encore adulthood. Can you flesh that out for us a little bit? What's that all about?
Yes. And Betsy, language is so difficult, especially when you're in a new field and just what do we call this and kind of how do we coalesce around it. But Phyllis Moen has been studying, she's a sociologist, and she's been studying life course development. So she's been looking at all of those changes and pivots and what goes on in people's lives at every life stage. And as she has been doing her research, she started to look more at just what is emerging after the career and family building years. So after that midlife time that I think we have a pretty good feel on, I mean, just as we kind of understand some of the dynamics of it, but before frailties of old age. And she believes that what is emerging today is a whole new life stage that is a direct result of longevity gains. And so we not only are we healthier in general, I mean, this is not universal, and we definitely have disparities, especially around race and class around these issues. But in general, we're living longer. We're entering those years healthier with a lot left to give. And she says that this is really an emerging life stage, a new life stage that we haven't had before. She's calling it encore adulthood to try to capture what this means. And she likens it to our process of understanding adolescence. At around 1900, there was a professor who started looking at what happens in the teen years. And he recognized that people who are in the teen years are not children, but they're also not adults. And so a whole bunch of research and studies started coalescing around this new life stage of adolescence as we tried to understand what does it mean for people to go through this stage. And, today we have so much information around the neurological development of people through that life stage. And we recognize they are, in fact, different from children and adults when we even look at neurologically.
Yes.
And Professor Phyllis Moen believes that we've got the same thing happening at the other spectrum of age, where we're living longer and the opportunities and the way that people are living are different. And so she's calling it encore adulthood because she feels that that term engages us in a way that is different from some of the terms we have that lump everyone together. So for instance, when we're in our 60s, oftentimes we get called senior citizens. And what that, I see you making a face, Betsy, because you and every other boomer who's entered that life stage is having a similar reaction. But, we are lumping together group of people that can be from 50 to 90 and plus.
Yes.
And it doesn't necessarily tease out what's going on in your life at that stage.
True.
And I think too, we live in an ageist society that also by lumping everyone together there, we're assuming a lot of frailty and a lot of limitations. And I think as people are entering these stages, they don't feel frail. And I would also argue people in their 80s and 90s also feel engaged and want to stay, that purpose is still important. So, I'm not at all saying that we want to discount that piece, but I think that we need to also think about the life stage of someone in their 50s and 60s and what they're looking for in life may still be very different from someone who are in their 80s and 90s.
Oh, sure. And I've talked to so many people who say what I say, which is when my mother was my age, I'm nothing like that model that was in my own family. I'm nothing like my mother at 60, who was one of these wash and set ladies who got her hair done once a week, and couldn't do anything athletic because she couldn't, she don't want sweaty hair or something. And so we're looking for that new model, and really we're all kind of making that path while walking, by walking it. And so it's kind of helpful to be getting all of these different data points and observations from academia. I think it's very validating to know that there is definitely something going on. It's not just me, and kind of looking around and saying this is definitely different from the people I knew my age who were my age when I was growing up, or when it's just completely different.
And I would also, the whole concept of a leisure retirement is socially constructed. I mean, it is a fairly new concept that came out of availability of Social Security, as well as, through the 50s of people not knowing what to do with their lives. And so, a retirement community kind of called Leisure World invented the concept of leisure retirement. And I think that what we need to recognize is not only did that model not fit for whole pockets of our population. So when you look at some of our lower income people, they never were able to fully fund a leisure retirement. Yeah. But I think it also doesn't reflect, and also didn't reflect even in the day, what a lot of people want from retirement. Because I think when you look at leisure, leisure is, many people yearn for leisure when they're working long hours and have demanding jobs, and they think, wow, I really want to step out of this. It's a rat race, and I can't wait to have total control of my time and energy. But what can also happen is if all you focus in on is leisure, then it's a hard way to bring in what is purposeful in your life and that sense of legacy and giving back. And that sense of purpose is really important for us as we look at aging well and that meaningful work and that meaningful life as we age. And so, if we are just looking at leisure, a lot of times that's an empty shell of a life for people. And I think that's definitely true as you talk to boomers and they look at their own identities and they're not necessarily embracing just leisure. They also want to have some ability to use their skills for the greater good, or also just challenge or achievement. When we look at work, we know that work it gives us a paycheck, right? But it's so much more than that. It's a social network. A lot of our social connections come from the workplace. Mm-hmm. People miss that when they retire, unless they recreate it somewhere else, but they miss working together on teams. They miss the social interaction. Yeah. They miss that sense of achievement. We have goals and we accomplish them, and that is really rewarding for people. And they oftentimes will also miss just even the rhythm to their days.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Weekends meant something. Weekends are kind of juxtaposed against, a work week, so it's a time to relax, a time to enjoy. When all we have on our calendar is a time to relax and time to enjoy, we often feel rudderless. We feel like we're just moseying around, and that can also lead to a lot of, just dissatisfaction with life.
Sure. When we talked before, you told me about a man who you became the caretaker to, who was in a retirement community, who was really in need of some purposeful engagement.
Yeah. So it's my husband's uncle, and he didn't have children. And my husband really was like a son to him. So he was really a father-in-law to me. And, what an amazing, delightful, wise person. I was so blessed and grateful to have him in our lives. But he retired to a retirement community. It was in Florida. It was a gated community, and it was a wonderful, beautiful place. But one of the things that I noticed when we would go down to visit him was just how so much of their lives revolved around being entertained. Mm. And not that there's anything wrong with that. And I wholeheartedly understand that, it is a time for fun. And I think people really need to embrace that. But what I was also seeing are just some cracks in that, in the sense that I think people were underutilized. They had all these talents that were not being put to good use. And I think people missed that sense of purpose. And I'll give one example. So we would visit with my children, who were in elementary school at the time. And one of his friends was a retired piano teacher. And so when we would go down, she would look forward all year to giving my daughters piano lessons. Mm. Now, my daughters were not so thrilled about spending their vacation and having to do piano lessons. And even though Miss Kay was wonderful and they adored her, I got a lot of eye rolling of just, Mom, really? And I'm like, you know what? For Miss Kay, this is really important. This is rewarding for her. And his friends would all gather when we were down there because they wanted to hear from someone of another generation. And they loved seeing my children. And when I looked around their community, there were no children. Other than the occasional visitors. Yeah. There were people my age who were more staff. Mm-hmm. But there weren't those natural interactions. And one of the things that he did, which I think was very wise on his part. So he was very computer literate, and he was actually, when he ended up in the nursing home, he was the first person that had to get wired for Wi-Fi in his nursing home room. So he was an early adapter, but he had this guy come every week to help him clean off his desktop and to help him just make sure that he wasn't getting any viruses. And this man's whole business was going around kind of coaching older adults on some technology issues. But I would say the more important piece of this was the relationship that developed with that. A real friendship developed. And so every week he was coming, and Harry would also mentor him. And this guy, would help Harry with some of his technology stuff. But it just really got me thinking of, I love that some of these retirement communities are really supportive of people and they provide wonderful care. But I think that we need to also look at how they intersect with intergenerational opportunities, how they are also, using the talent of these older adults to contribute to their communities. So they're not all just in this little enclave that's isolated and age segregated around leisure. I just think it just reinforced for me, I don't want to live in that kind of community. I want to live in a community where there's children.
Yes.
Whether they're mine or not.
Right.
I want to live in a community that has intergenerational things. And I think we are seeing some trends around, older adult housing, senior housing that are really trying to bring intergenerational living together. So I think boomers are like me in that they're saying that they want more of that. But I do think it also really shaped my interest in working in this space.
Interesting. I'm so sad about the lady who wants to give piano lessons when you think, if there had been a program director who could say, hey, we have a community of children who would love to learn to play the piano. How could that person's talents be used to help children whose whose parents, don't know where to find a piano teacher or maybe can't afford a piano teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just opens up a lot of possibilities when you think about how you could share those talents with communities that are interested in that person's talent. It's,
And I think this is part of the ageism in our society that, Harry was 95 when he died. And, he and all of his friends were in their 90s, but I think we look at someone who is older, especially, someone who is, late years, like, 90s, and all we see is an old person who needs help. And we don't see just the tremendous value that they could be bringing in our communities.
Yes.
And I think that's a shift that we really need to be making as a society, because we can't afford to just sideline all of our elders and just, warehouse them. I mean, they have talents that we need. We have, community challenges that could benefit from someone who has time and talent and is willing to give back.
Yeah. I bet if my listener was interested in this topic, you could contact a lot of community organizations that have ways of connecting seniors with volunteer programs. One that comes to mind in Westchester County is a program where seniors read to, elementary age children and, read books and help them with their reading skills. And that's just a natural matchup there. But that's just one. I can imagine piano teaching, maybe chess instruction or homework help or something like that.
Absolutely. And I think too, a really great resource for people to start with would be encore.org. And, their name is their website. So it's just encore.org, and getting on their mailing list, because their focus right now is on intergenerational give back and connection. And so they not only have some wonderful stories, but also, they can let you know about some of these amazing connections. I'll mention one that I am so excited about. It's called Nuns and Nuns. So it's nuns, like the Catholic sisters, and then nuns, None, like people who have no religious affiliation. And this organization is bringing together social justice advocates across generations. A lot of, the sisters, the nuns, during the 60s and 70s were real champions for social justice.
Sure.
And they are supporting some of the work of some of our young social justice entrepreneurs who are trying to make a difference in communities. And they've even, some of these community relationships are even going so far as, think about nuns, there's fewer and fewer of them, and they have more and more space in their convents. And young social entrepreneurs or social activists oftentimes are underpaid and don't have money to pay for rent in their communities. So they're developing housing relationships as well.
How interesting.
There's some interesting work coming out around housing of just, people, older adults in communities where rents are high, opening up their houses to graduate students to come live in their houses, and intergenerational connections that way. So I think that, we're going to see a lot of innovation around some of these things, partly driven by the fact that we have, such, expensive housing and, student debt, and just, we have some real challenges around finances for young adults.
Sure.
But then we also have older adults wanting to age in place and having big houses that not only do they have extra space, but then they also would appreciate that intergenerational connection and maybe a little help around the house with some of those chores that might be hard for them to do.
Oh, sure. This has been such a great conversation. This is like totally amazing. I always ask my guests for 3 pieces of advice that you would have. And let's maybe go back to our original idea of using education using education as their path forward to determining what they want to do next. What advice do you have to share?
One is be okay getting out of your comfort zone. I think a lot of people are intimidated with the idea of going back to school and just, not only just like, how do you navigate that, but then, do I have what it takes to do well academically? And I guess what I would advise people is, what? Lifelong learning is so good for us. I mean, just from a cognitive perspective, as well as, being able to open up ideas and follow your curiosity, get out of your comfort zone. It's okay to be a novice. It's okay to experiment, and you don't have to have it figured out. Like, don't go in thinking you have to figure it out. Just allow yourself that room to experiment. And if you fail, so what? I mean, at this life stage, what does it matter, really?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not good at something, then you just, find something else. So, I just allow yourself to get out of your comfort zone. Don't take yourself too seriously. Don't worry about having to succeed at everything. You can fail at things, and you learn from that. I guess the second one would be take small steps. You don't have to quit a job and dive in to be a full-time student and retool to do something. Start with something small. I mean, you can start with taking maybe an online class. There's free ones out there called MOOCs, MOOCs, that are offered by many of the top universities. You can earn credit for it, or you don't have to. You could just, take it to enrich your life. Or Coursera, or, there's others out there as well, but just, you could start with something small that's not a big financial commitment, not a big time commitment, but just see if you like it, if you enjoy it. You can also look at some other resources, like, on our campus, we have an Osher Lifelong Learning. A lot of universities do, and it is taught by people in their communities. It's designed for older adults, and it's lifelong learning for older adults, and it's taught by people in the community. So it's kind of a peer run thing, but I mean, wonderful opportunity to expand your horizons and learn about things that you're passionate about, or explore new passions. And then I'd also say, really, and volunteer your time as a way to learn new skills.
Sure,
you don't know where it's going to take you. So if you want to find something, volunteer on a project to try something else out. And then the third thing I would like to say, so we've got, get out of your comfort zone, take small steps. And then the third is, don't be afraid of technology, embrace it.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I know that there's a lot of stereotypes out there around older adults. They don't know technology. And I think we have them about ourselves as well. We can get really easily intimidated. And I just want to say, you know what? Everyone is behind in technology. I don't care whatever your age is. What we do, and what I think boomers and Generation Xers and what we do well is we figure out the tools we need to do to get our work done. And so, if you need to use Excel, then you learn Excel. I mean, just like everybody else. And so, don't undercut ourselves. But I will say that for people, there's a couple of tools if you're looking at a career change that you should absolutely get comfortable with. And one of them is LinkedIn. And
absolutely.
you definitely want to be having a presence on that site, not only because it allows you to kind of tell the story of what you're looking for, whether it's a career change or volunteering, that's the place that organizations are going to go to find out more about you.
Right.
And not having a profile is going to communicate something about maybe a discomfort with technology, even if you know other tools. So LinkedIn, you really want to have a presence there. But then the other nice thing about LinkedIn is that it also allows you to expand your networks. And, many of us of our generation had Rolodex, right?
Right.
I mean, my kids don't know what that means.
No.
But what we had was business cards, and we would keep those business cards. But then what happened when people left those jobs? We lost touch oftentimes.
Yes.
LinkedIn is your way to reconnect with a lot of people that you've known. I mean, this is the advantage of being 50 plus, right? Because we've had jobs, we've had coworkers, we've, lived in different communities. We know people. And so it's a way for you to rekindle some of those connections. And you never know where that's going to take you with regards to opportunities.
Absolutely. LinkedIn has been key to what I've been doing on the podcast, connecting with interview guests and also getting listeners. So absolutely, LinkedIn is really key. And it's been fun to reconnect with people I haven't seen in a while. And you kind of send a little hello, a little wave over the internet, and then that's fun. And then you get to see what they're up to and they see what you're up to. So
absolutely.
It's a great tip. Kate Schaefers, this has been absolutely a fantastic conversation, and thank you so much for giving my listeners so many great ideas about finding a path forward and looking at all the different educational opportunities that are out there. And I hope everything goes well on the University of Minnesota campus where you are. And
thank you.
Have a great fall. Yes.
And can I add one more thing?
Yes,
one more
of course.
Resource. So the program that we have is very new. I mean, there's only 5 universities in the United States that have these kinds of programs that are immersive in this way. And we're all still trying to figure it out. But we have started a nonprofit organization, a community-based collaborative across these universities that might be of interest if you're looking at your own university as well as just your own community. And it's called the Nexel Collaborative. And so the website is the Nexel, and it's THENEXEL.org. So It's a great first stop if you're thinking about these kinds of programs in your community.
Great. We'll have that up on the show notes for folks to follow up on if they want to, and that's great information. Kate, thank you so much for being with me on the latest version.
Yes, thank you so much.
Great.
Thanks, Betsy.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.